Hello my friends, welcome back to my After Effects tutorial channel. This is Randy from Rhandz Graphix. Please support my channel by hitting subscribe, especially for those friends who newly visited my channel. Press like. If you have questions or concerns about this video, just let me know in the comment section below and I invite you guys to share this video. Okay, so now I will show you what we are gonna be creating today. As usual, we will create a new composition and I will name it BG or background. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, and the duration is 10 seconds. Click OK. I will open my folder assets here. Go to image, open other elements, drop down this color guide into the timeline. Move this color guide just on the upper left corner of the composition. Go back to project panel and drop down this background into the timeline. Press this on your keyboard for the scale. Scale it down to 48%. Then I will go to Effects and Preset. Go to Color Correction, Tritone. I will change the mid-tone color here by picking up this color picker and choose this color. Go and highlight this color guide, delete it. Then go to Composition, create a new composition. I will name it Inklight 1. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Go to the project panel. Open footage, go to Inklight, and I will drop this Inklight 1 into the timeline. Then go to Composition, create a new composition. I will name it Hexagon. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, and the duration is 10 seconds. Click OK. Open the other elements, drop down this hexagon into the timeline. Enable the transparency in here so that you can see. Go to composition, create a new composition. This time I will name it image placeholder 1. Same 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Go to your project panel and open these images. Drop down this image into the timeline. Press S on your keyboard for the scale and scale it down. Drag this down a bit, just like that. Then go to composition, create a new composition. I will name it text placeholder 1. I will change the width here to 1000 and the height is 400. 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Disable this transparency and enable this title action safe. I will zoom it in, grab the text tool and type Rhandz Graphix. I will align it to the center horizontal. Change the font to Tahoma. And I want to choose this regular at 100 pixels. Then I will grab the text tool again. I will type presents. I will align it horizontally again. Then I will change the font size to 72. And I will just drag this down a bit, just like that. And this one up. Center it horizontally. And on this one, center it horizontally. Highlight this presents text and change the want here to space Graphix. I want to use the regular. The space between letters is 0. Then go to composition again and create a new composition. I will name it ink card. I will change this width to 1920 and the height I will change this to 1080p. 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Then open this ink card folder, drop down this ink card 001 into the timeline. Zoom it out, go to composition again and create a new composition. This time I will name it particles. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Open the particles folder and drop down this particle 1 into the timeline. Now go back to composition and create a new composition. I will name it scene 1. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Now go to the project panel and drop down this BG into the timeline. Toggle switches mode in here and enable the 3D layer. Highlight the ink light one, drop it down into the timeline and enable the 3D layer. Toggle switches mode in here. Change the blending mode to multiply. Then move your playhead to about 18 frames duration. Press open bracket key to move that layer. Then go to the project panel and drop down this hexagon into the timeline. Change the blending mode here to overlay. Press this on your keyboard for the scale. Shift T for the opacity. Change the opacity here to 50% and the scale, change this to 50%. Then go to the project panel and drop down this image placeholder 1 into the timeline. Move your playhead to the 24 frames and press open bracket key to move that layer. Press S on your keyboard for the scale. Change the scale to 45%. Be sure that this placeholder is highlighted. Go to the shape tool and create a mask. Now go open the mask and change the mask feather here to 200. Now go to this mask, adjust it smaller. So now go to the project panel and drop down this ink card into the timeline. Press open bracket key to move that layer and press S on your keyboard for the scale and change the scale to 165. Then change the track matte in here on the image placeholder to Luma inverted matte. Zoom it out. Then go back to your project panel and drop down this text placeholder 1 into the timeline. Move your playhead to 1 second and 10 frames duration and press open bracket key to move that layer. Then toggle switches mode in here. Make sure that this layer is a 3D layer. Press S on your keyboard for the scale and Shift R for the rotation. Change the scale here to 40% and the Z rotation, change this to 31. Highlight this placeholder and move it on the other side here. I think that should be good enough. You can move the text wherever you want within the composition, okay? So now I will go to my project panel and drop down these particles into the timeline. I will toggle switches mode in here. Change the blending mode here to screen. Now I will go and create a new folder and I will name it S1. I will highlight these compositions and drag it inside the S1 folder. Then I will create again another folder which is inside the S1 and I will name it Common Comps. I will drag the compositions that I'm not gonna tweak on the scene 2, like this BG. I will drag it on the Common Comps and the hexagon. Create another folder and I will name it S2. Highlight these compositions, go to edit and duplicate it. Then drag these compositions to the scene 2 folder. Close the scene 1. Delete these compositions in order to have a more space to work at. Then go back to your project panel and double click these compositions to open it up. First I will open the image placeholder, delete this image, go to assets, open the image folder, go to images and drop this image into the timeline. Press S on your keyboard for the scale and scale it down. drag it down a bit. Then open Inkart 2, go to footage, open it up, open this Inkart folder, drop down this Inkart 2 into the timeline. Then highlight this 001 footage, delete it, open Inklight 2, drop this Inklight footage into the timeline. Just highlight this one and delete it. I will go back to the scene 1 folder, double click this Inklight one. I want to delete this footage and change the footage to the footage 1, just like that. Open particles 2 and footage, go to your particles folder, open it up, drop this particle 2 footage into the timeline. Then open the text placeholder, highlight this Rhandz Graphix, double click your mouse to change the text. I will change this to motion graphics animation. I will change the space in between letters to 0. As you can see that our composition is short, so all I have to do is to go to composition here, go to composition settings and change the width here to 1400. Zoom it out, highlight these percents, double click your mouse to change the text. I will change this to After Effects CC 2020. Make sure that it's center horizontal. I will highlight the After Effects CC 2020. I will change the space in between letters in here to 0. Now open Scene 2. Replace all the compositions in here by Compositions 2. Press your keyboard Alt and hold it. Then highlight this Inklight 1 and replace it with the Inklight 2. Highlight this Image Placeholder 1, replace it with the Image Placeholder 2. Text Placeholder 1 to Text Placeholder 2. Particles to Particles 2. Highlight this Text Placeholder 2, press P on your keyboard for the position and Shift R for the rotation. I'll just use this to drag it up, and maybe I will just change the Z rotation here to 0. Highlight it again, I will just drag it down a bit. Now go to Composition, create a new composition. I will name it Main. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, and the duration I want it 15 seconds. Click OK. Open this S1 folder, drop down the Scene 1 into the timeline. Open the S2, highlight the Scene 2 and drop it down into the timeline. Highlight both layers and enable the 3D layers. Then move your playhead to about 5 seconds. Highlight this Scene 2 layer, press open bracket E to move that layer. Then press P for the position. I'll just change the position on the Z value, probably -2000. Highlight Scene 2, press R on your keyboard for the rotation, and Shift T for the opacity. Create a keyframe on the X, Y, and Z rotation. Change the value on the X rotation to -18. The Y rotation is 0, and the Z rotation, change this to 30. Then move forward your playhead to the 6 seconds duration and change the value on the X rotation 0. Then the Y rotation, just hit the tiny diamond icon in here to create a keyframe. Then go to the Z rotation and change the value here to 12. Then move back your playhead to the 5 seconds and 10 frames and change the opacity here to 0. Create a keyframe by hitting this stopwatch on the opacity. Move your playhead to about 5 seconds and 18 frames. And change the opacity value here 100%. Then I will highlight these keyframes. Press F9 to ease it. Now go to Layer, create a new camera. I'm using a custom preset camera. Click OK. Then go to Layer, create a new null object. And I want it a 3D layer. Parent the camera to the null object. Go to Layer again, create a new null object. And I want this null object a 3D layer. Parent the null object 1 to the null object 2. Then highlight both the null object. Press P on your keyboard for the position. Shift R for the rotation. Then move back your playhead to the beginning of the timeline. Create a keyframe on the position of the null 2 object. Go to null 1. Create a keyframe on the position, X rotation, and Z rotation. Change the Z position on your null 1 object to 2200 for now. Then the X rotation, change it to -5. The Z rotation, change this to -15. Then move my playhead to about 1 second and 5 frames. I will change the Z position on the null1 object to 1250. The y value, will change this to 20. The x value 136. Go to the x rotation and change this value here to 0. Change the z rotation to 0. Then move your playhead to the 5 seconds duration and change the position here on the null object to negative 200. Then on the null1 object, just hit the tiny diamond icon in here to create a keyframe. Then move your playhead to the 6 seconds duration and change the value on the null1 position to negative 485 on the z value. Then the x and y, just changes this to 0. Then I will change the z rotation here, 15. Then move my playhead to the 10 seconds duration. Hit the tiny diamond icon in here to create a keyframe. Now to z position, I'll change this to negative 500. Then I will highlight these keyframes. Push F9 to ease it.
Delete this keyframe because it's not included.
Then I will go to layer, create a new adjustment layer. Then I will move back my playhead to 1 second and 10 frames duration. I will go to edit, split it. Delete this side of the layer. Then highlight the adjustment layer and go to effects and preset. Add radial blur. Create a keyframe on the amount and make this amount 0. Then move your playhead to the beginning of your timeline and change the amount here to 30. Then change the type to zoom. That's what I want. Highlight it, press my keyboard Ctrl D to duplicate it. Then I will move this second adjustment layer to the 5 seconds duration. Go to layer, create a new solid. I want it black, click OK. Go to your shape tool and create a mask by double clicking your mouse. Open the mask and go to the mask shape. Change the top here to negative 270. The bottom, change this to 1350. Left, change this to negative 47.5. And the right side, change this to 1967.5. Then click OK. Check this inverted. The mask feather, change this value to 500. I will again go to layer and create a new solid. And this time I will name it fade in. Make it composite, click OK. Then I will move back my playhead to 1 second. Then go to edit, split the layer. Delete this layer. Highlight this layer, press T on my keyboard for the opacity. Change the opacity here to 0. Create a keyframe by hitting this stopwatch. Move back your playhead to the beginning of your timeline and change this opacity value to 100. Drag this down under the vignette. Then go to the project panel and drag down this light click into the timeline. Right click your mouse and pre-compose it. I will just name it light leaks. Move all the attributes into the new composition, click OK. Toggle switches mode in here, change the blending mode to add. Then press your keyboard D for the opacity. I'll just make this opacity 15%. So let's try to preview it. So as you can see in here that the text is here. All we have to do is to go to our scene 2 and highlight this placeholder. I will just drop it down a bit like that and open the main again. Let's see. Yeah, try to check the scene 1. As you can see here, all you have to do is to go to the scene 1 folder, open the scene 1 and highlight this text placeholder. Just drag it down a bit. Open main and see. There you go. Reduce this opacity to 10%. If you don't want to be too close to the camera, all you have to do is to highlight the scene 2 and press P on your keyboard to see the position. Adjust the Z position depending on your preference, okay? Just like that. Let's preview it again. If you want to reduce the opacity of your light ticks, you can do so, okay? So guys, we are done with our tutorial and I hope that you like this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share and press the notification bell so that you will get alerts if I have new videos to upload. And my thoughts for today guys is that don't stop learning because it is a great tool, okay? So thank you guys for watching and see you next time. God bless.